Hello, hello, hello. I am the Linux Mensch. It's been quite a while since I've done a video on Manjaro. Probably earlier this year or an early part of the spring. And Manjaro was my first Arch-based distro that I used because it was easy to install. And it's where I got used to doing things in a terminal using Pacman. Now, Manjaro is based on Arch Linux, but it's a little bit different in the sense where they have their own repository. So what Manjaro does is when Arch Linux puts out new packages, Manjaro takes them, they test them for 2 weeks, and then they release them. So when you're downloading packages from Manjaro, you're not downloading directly from the Arch Linux repository. You're downloading from Manjaro repository. And another thing is that when you install Arch Linux, it's fully up to date. Now, of course, Arch Linux puts out a new ISO once a month, but that new ISO is only for brand new installs. It's not for updating your system. And regardless of whether you use the Arch Linux automated installer or you manually type in all the commands to install Arch Linux, when you finish installing Arch Linux, it's fully up to date. Now, Manjaro also puts out a new ISO, not every month, but I think 4 times a year. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's every few months or 3 or 4 months. Manjaro puts out a new ISO, which is also for brand new installations. It's not for updating the system. With Manjaro, when you use an ISO to do an installation, you have to update it. So the thing is, if the ISO is new, there'll be a few updates to do, not many. But if the ISO is 2 months old, then there probably will be 100 or 160 updates to do. But the Manjaro repository and mirrors are very fast. So having said all that, another thing I want to talk about before I actually do an install of Manjaro is that Manjaro came out with a new ISO the other day. But the thing is that I really don't like the Manjaro website. Now I used to. Now Manjaro totally changed their website. And I used to like the Manjaro website. And I think their new website is at least a year old. It might be a year and a half or 2 years old. I'm not exactly sure. And I don't particularly like their new website, and I'm going to show you why. So let's get to it. So I've opened up my web browser, Firefox, and first I'm going to go to Distrowatch. Distro. This is how I know that Manjaro came out with a brand new ISO. Yesterday, they came out with Manjaro 23.1.1. And I clicked it on. And just to watch, has an article about it, and they tell you about it. So let's just go back for a second. So this came out on December 23rd, which was yesterday. Today is December 24th. And that's how I found out about it. Now, let's go to the Manjaro website. Manjaro.org. So the Manjaro website used to have on their main page the brand new ISOs that came out, and they would give the date when the ISO came out. And they also, when their ISOs come out, they always give it a new name. They would give it the name and the date, and there'd be a paragraph discussion about the new ISO, and then you could click it on and look further into it. Here I can't find anything. So this is their new website. It might be a year, maybe a year and a half or 2 years old. I'm not sure. And if we go to blog, let's go to latest to blog. Blog news. Look at. There's nothing here. The last entry was about Black Friday deals on November 24th. This article is from April 20th. Like, this article is from February 26th. Here, latest and last entries was November 24th. April 20th, February 26th, November 24th, April 20th. I don't understand their website. And then here, if we go down here, we're down to December 22. So that's a year ago. I don't want to look at stuff from a year ago. So, and their old website used to have a blog, and they used to have current articles and current releases right on the blog. So I don't get this. Anyways, so let's go to, we don't want to go to merchandise because Manjaro sells merchandise. I don't want to look at that. I want to go to project. Oh, well, it's not there. Let's go to download. Okay, let's go to download. And I don't want ARM. I'm going to pick x86-64. So here it shows you all the different ISOs you can download. So they have 3 official flavors, and they always did. There's the Plasma Desktop, XFCE, and the GNOME Desktop. And then they have community editions, which they always did as well. So there's Budgie, Cinnamon, i3 Window Manager, Sway, Mate, and Manjaro Docker. And I think that's a relatively new one. It might be like a year or a year and a half, 2 years old. I'm not sure. But these ones they always had. Now the community edition ones, so the old website, they always had the dates when the ISO came out. So you knew if it was a recent ISO or an old ISO. And the reason why you don't want a really old ISO is that, like I said, when you do a Manjaro install, you have to update it. Whereas when you do a pure Arch Linux install, it's updated. When you finish your install, it's already updated. So with the Manjaro, like I said, you don't want a 6-month ISO or an ISO that's a year old. Now, Manjaro, these 3 at the top are their official flavors, and or images, if you want to call it that. They're the official images. So these were always up to date. Sometimes they were 3 months old. I think 4 times a year they were updating these. And you could always see the date that they were updated. Now here, you can't see the date that was updated. So if I click on Visit Plasma, it's going to take me to the Plasma website. It's going to take me out of Manjaro into the Plasma website. The same with this. It's going to take me to the XFCE website. And if you go here, it's going to take me to the GNOME website. Out of Manjaro. So, and if I click on this, it's just going to download the ISO. So I have no way of knowing when the ISO was released. Except for I know that these 3 ISOs were just released yesterday because of the Distrowatch website. Now, I don't know where Distrowatch gets their information from, but hey, what can I say? So now the thing is that the community editions, now I'm talking a few years ago, I really don't know now because I can't see the dates. But the community editions, which are not official, sometimes they used to be 6 months old. Sometimes they were a year old. Because I used to use this one. I used to use the Cinnamon Community Edition. Because back in those days, I wasn't using a window manager. And because there was a while when I lived in Manjaro, it was my main driver. And I used to use the Cinnamon desktop because I wasn't into the awesome window manager. I hadn't discovered it yet. And I didn't know about the Qtile window manager. And out of all the desktop environments, Cinnamon is my favorite. Even though nowadays I live in the awesome window manager. So this Cinnamon desktop, back in the days on the old Manjaro website, you could see that these community supported ISOs were old. Sometimes they were 6 months old. Sometimes they were a year old. There was one that they used to have, and I don't see it there anymore. They used to have an awesome ISO, I believe. I think they did. And it was like a year and a half or 2 years old, and when I tried installing it, it wouldn't even work. But these ones, sometimes they were a year old, a year and a half old. So there was a possibility it may not work, or if it did work, you would have a huge update to do. So, like again, there's no way to find out what these dates are. This I really don't like. You can visit the Cinnamon website, but that takes you out of Manjaro, or you can download it. So really, I have a really big criticism about their website. I don't like it. I don't think it gives you enough information about the releases, and what can I say? So anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to download one of these official ones, because apparently, according to Distrowatch, these are brand new ISOs. They just came out yesterday. So there shouldn't be any problem with them installing, and there shouldn't be a huge update to do. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the Gnome one, because I'm not a great fan of the Gnome desktop. Out of all the desktop environments, it's probably the one I like the least. But Manjaro does a nice job in theming the Gnome desktop, and that's another issue about these three official flavors. The Gnome team does a really nice job at theming the Plasma, the XFCE, and the Gnome. Now, if you download any one of these three desktops in pure Arch Linux, they're but ugly. And actually, that would be the same as any of these. If you download any of these desktops in pure Arch Linux, they're ugly, and you have to theme them yourself. But Manjaro really does do a nice job at theming their desktop environments, regardless of whether it's the community editions, which are these ones, or the official editions. Now, like I said, these community editions, I don't know how old these ISOs are. And I only know that these three official ones are new, apparently, according to Distrowatch. So anyways, like I said, Gnome is the least favorite of mine, but I'm going to download it because I like the way they themed it. And anyways, once it's downloaded, you can always install the Awesome Window Manager or the Qtile Window Manager, and you can live in those. You don't have to live in these desktop environments that you're downloading. Anyways, enough talking. So let's download it. Let's click on the download button. And you have these options. Now you can do a minimal install, or you can do a full install. Now the full install is going to install all the apps that Manjaro has decided to give you. So let's do a full install. And download full image. Yeah, I'm going to click it on. And now it's downloading it. And I can see, I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of dark. I'm on dark mode here. It's 3.8 gigabytes. So let's just see how long it takes. And it says a minute and a half left. I'm just going to pause the video and come back when it's downloaded. So it finished downloading. It took about a minute, maybe a minute and a half. And it was 3.8 gigabytes. And we can see this is a current ISO. This is the ISO that came out yesterday, because we can see it's 23.1.1, and it came out in 23/12/23. So we know that it came out in the year of, well, it came out December 23rd, 2023, because Manjaro puts the dates in all of their ISOs, just in case you're wondering. So I know that this is the current ISO. So when I do my installation today, there shouldn't be any updating to do. Okay, so let's get out of there. I'm going to close my web browser. I'm going to create a virtual machine, and I'll come back. So I've logged on to a virtual machine. I created a virtual machine. I gave it a 50 gig hard drive, 4 gigs of RAM, and I've logged on to the live ISO of Manjaro Gnome Edition. And here I'm at the welcome screen. So of course, you can read all this stuff. You can click on these links. I don't like this to launch at startup, so I'm going to toggle that off, and I'm going to close this. So now the first thing I'm going to do is, now of course I haven't done an installation yet. I'm just, one of the nice things about Manjaro as opposed to pure Linux is that you can log on and play with it and see what it's about. And if you don't want it, you can turn it off, and you haven't erased anything in your hard drive. You still have your current installation in your hard drive. So that's one of the nice things about Manjaro as opposed to pure Arch Linux. I'm not that familiar with the Gnome desktop. I've played with the Gnome desktop a few times, but I've never lived in it, so please bear with me. So let's do a display. Let's just see if we can change the resolution on this because it is a virtual machine. Let's go into here. Let's go 1360 by 768. Keep the changes. That's better. Yes. I like that. Yes. Yes, I like that better. So, I mean, you can play with it. I'm not gonna play with it. I'm just gonna go through and install. So here, if you just click on this icon here, install Manjaro Linux. And welcome to Manjaro. American English, yes. I'm gonna click on next. And let's just see if we can move this a bit over or make it full screen, just so my face is not in the way. Okay, so it's already recognized my location. And it's even telling you it's going to be set to Canadian English. Nice. Okay, so let's go next. And it's giving me keyboard options. And with Manjaro, I always like to do, let's do French Canada, and then click on English Canada. And actually, this is the exact keyboard that I'm using, just like that. So let's click on next. Now, one thing I like about the way the Calamares installer is configured in Manjaro, and this is nice. So you can see it's a 50 gig hard drive. We're gonna erase the disk. It gives you options here of what kind of file system you want to use. ext4, btrfs, f2fs, xfs. I always go with ext4. And it also gives you the option of swap. So by default, it's set at no swap, which is the one that I always use in my pure Arch Linux. When I'm installing pure Arch Linux, I never make a swap partition. But that's all personal. It's up to you. But you have the option here. So there's a pull-down menu. You can do no swap, swap, no hibernation, swap with hibernation, or swap to file. So I'm just going to leave it on the default of no swap, but I really like this. I really like this option here. And of course, you can do a manual partition, but I'm not going to go and do that. So I'm going to click on next. Now it's asking for my full name. I'm just going to put in Mensch. Okay. And what is the name of this computer? I'm going to call my computer Manjaro Gnome, just in case I decide to install another virtual machine of Manjaro from one of the other editions. And I'm going to put a password in. So I'm going to put my super secret password. I'm going to repeat it. And log in automatically without asking for the password. I'm going to leave that on default, which is not clicked on. Use the same password for administrative account? Sure. Now you can have a different password for root account. And if you want a different password for your root account, you're going to put it in here. But I'm going to keep the same password just so I don't get confused. So I'm going to use the same password for the administrative account. If you click it on, then I don't have to type it in. So if you want a different password for root, you're going to have to unclick that and type it in. But if you want to use the same password for root, click it on, and then you don't have to retype it. Let's click on next. And it's asking you to pick an official suite from the list. So it's asking you if you want an office suite. So you can click on, and I really like this. This part I think is fantastic. So you can click on no office suite, LibreOffice, or FreeOffice. Now I've never used FreeOffice, so I can't say whether it's good or not because I don't know anything about it. But I've used LibreOffice, so I'm going to click that on. And of course, if you don't want an office suite, if you're not going to use Word documents or spreadsheet documents, or anything else that's offered in the Office suite, you could just say no Office suite. But I'm going to click on LibreOffice and I'm going to hit next. Now it's just telling me what everything is, and make sure this is what you want and click on install. So let's click on the install button. Continue with installation. It's going to erase your hard drive. Well, in my case, it's a virtual drive. Install now. So I don't know how long this is going to take. So I'm going to pause the video and come back when the installation's finished. So don't go away. Okay, so the installation is done. And you know what? I forgot to time it. I forgot to take note of the time when I hit the install button. But I would say it took between 5 minutes and 10. I think closer to 5 or 6 minutes. I sat here the whole time while it was installing. I never got out of my chair. So we're going to click on this to restart. And I'm going to click on done. And let's restart and boot into the system. I'm going to make this full screen. So for some reason, it's not booting up into the system properly. The login manager didn't arrive. And I have the black screen of death. So what I'm going to do is minimize this. I'm going to go here and I'm going to power down. Force off. Let's force it off. And now I'm going to open it. Let's try this again. And before I do that, I want to make sure the ISO is disconnected. So I'm just going to go into here. Yes, the ISO is disconnected. So let's try this again. Let's power on my brand new virtual machine of Manjaro. Let's see if we can boot into it and get the login screen to appear. And I don't know if this is a Manjaro problem or a GNOME problem or a virtual machine problem. So let's see if we can get past this black screen and get it to come up with the login manager, or the display manager as it's properly called. How about that, eh? Can't log into the brand new system. No, I don't know what to say. Well, I'm going to pause the video and see if I can figure this out. Okay, I was able to get into my install by fiddling around with it, and I got into the full installation and a GNOME desktop, but I didn't do anything. I didn't make any changes, and as soon as I got in, I powered down because I want to see if I can boot into it again with or without trouble. And if I do have trouble, I want you to see how I fixed it. Okay, so of course I had the camera paused while I was fiddling around with it. So let's try booting it into it again and see if I can get straight into it. Now, if I do boot into it, I don't know what the problem was because I didn't fix anything. I just fiddled around and I was able to get into it. I didn't change any configuration files. I didn't fix anything. So anyways, enough said. Let's see if I can just boot directly into it this time without trouble. And I'm going to make that full screen. And this time I'm going to leave the camera rolling just so you can see. And I think this time it's going to go into it. Hopefully. And it's taking quite a while to boot up because this is the GNOME desktop, and the GNOME desktop is probably one of the heavier desktops of all the distributions. And it looks like it's not going into it. I have the black screen of death. Now, I don't know if this is a virtual machine problem. And if you are installing Manjaro Gnome Edition on bare metal, I don't know if this will be the problem. Now, I don't know why it would be a virtual machine problem, because first of all, I'm using Virt Manager on top of QEMU, and I've installed Manjaro in this virtual program many times before. I've installed Manjaro Gnome, I've installed Manjaro KDE, Plasma, I've installed Manjaro Cinnamon many times in this virtual machine. Now, I don't have any of those virtual machines available to show you because I deleted them. And because, every once in a while I get way too many virtual machines installed, and then I just want to clean up my computer and I delete the ones I'm not using. But earlier this year, I did some videos on GNOME, and I did them in this virtual machine program called Virt Manager. So I know that's not the problem. So anyways, look, I have the black screen of death. So what I'm going to do is, now if this was bare metal, I would do Control Alt and I press F3, F4, F5, one of those lower F numbers, something below 7. I'd press one of those F numbers below 7 to get into a TTY. But because this is not bare metal, I'm not going to press Control Alt and F3 or F4. I'm going to go up here because this is a virtual machine. I'm going to click on this icon here. And let's click on Control. Well, let's try Control F1 and see what happens. Nothing happens. Let's try Control F7 and nothing happens. Let's try Control F4. Okay, so I'm at TTY4. Let's put in my password. Sorry, my username. My username is Mitch. Let's put my password in. So now I'm logged in as Mensch into TTY4 of Manjaro. Let's see if we can do an Htop. Now I know that's hard to read. The colors are really bad, eh? So I'm using 559 gigabytes of RAM, which is really high considered my desktop environment is not loaded. I'm not loaded into, or I'm not logged into the GNOME desktop environment. I'm just logged into the TTY of Manjaro. That's really high for TTY, 559. And sorry about the small font. I don't suppose you can see that. Let's quit out of here. Let's just do an LS. Let's do LS. I don't have LL there, okay? Let's do LS8. Let's log into the xinitrc. Vim. Oh, don't tell me Vim is not installed. Vim. Well, let's cat xinitrc. And Vim is not installed, eh? Let's do sudo pacman s vim. But then if I install Vim, I'm not going to have my, let's see. Oh, I wonder if Vi is installed. Let's do Vi. It is. xinitrc. What I'm going to do, I'm going to quit out of here. I'm going to save xinitrc. I'm going to save it. Oops. I'm doing that wrong. I'm going to move it to xinitrc.save. Now I'm going to create a new xinitrc by period xinitrc. And I'm going to just type in GNOME session. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to do startx. See if we can get into our GNOME desktop environment. And there we are. So I don't know why the login manager or the display manager is not working. That's kind of odd. So, so we're in here. What I'm going to do is change the display. Now I know we did this on a live ISO. But once you do your install, you have to change it again. And I'm going to turn off this welcome to Manjaro. I don't want that coming in when I boot in. And what do I want to do? Oh yes, I'm changing the display. I thought I went in there. Let's try that again. Display. Let's click it on. Let's change this to 1360 by 768 and apply it. Keep the changes. Okay. Now let's do an Htop in here. I just want to see. Thought I clicked it. Let's try that again. Like I said before earlier, I'm not familiar with okay, let's try it here. I'm not familiar with the Gnome desktop, although I've played with it, 3 or 4, maybe 5 times, maybe 10 at the most, but I never lived in it. Let's go to System Tools. There it is there. Let's try and clicking on there. There we go. Oh, now it's on twice. Okay. So, wow. Okay, there we go. So it's using 1.4 gig. Wow. Oh, now it went down to 1.3. So the Gnome desktop is a higher desktop. It's running at 1.3 gig. Wow. Let's close that. So one of the first things I do with Manjaro, regardless of whether I'm using GNOME or KDE or the Cinnamon desktop or one of the window managers, one of the first things I do is go into the Software Center. And that's taking quite a bit of time to load up. And it's not loading. Oh, there it goes. Wow, that took a really long time to load. So what I do is I go into here and I click on this icon here with the 3 dots, and I'm going to go down to Preferences. I'm going to click on Preferences. Oh, it's asking for my password. Let's put my user password in. And what I'm going to do is go down here. To use mirrors is set by worldwide. I'm going to change that to Canada. There it is there, Canada. So I'm telling the system, just use mirrors from Canada. I don't want to use mirrors from the whole world. And I'm going to refresh the mirrors. So you see this green line here? It's refreshing the mirrors. And I'm going to close this. Finished. Now you can check for updates here, and this is this update manager. You can install programs from here. You can check for updates here. Let's just do a search for Brave. And there we are. You can download the Brave browser. So that's how you'd use it. This is called PAMAC, not to be confused with Pac-Man. It's PAMAC, P-A-M-A-C. And the Manjaro team, they're the ones that created this PAMAC software application. And of course, you can install PAMAC if you're using pure Arch Linux as well, which I don't. I don't particularly like it, so I don't use it. I have used it in the past when I used to live in, there was, quite a few years ago, I used to live in Manjaro full time. I ran it on my desktop and I used PAMAC back in those days, but I'm a Pac-Man person now. So that's how you would use it. You could go to categories. Let's click on utilities. And you can install something from here, music and video. You can look for apps. You can do a search for apps and search. You can do featured. Here's GIMP. So you can go through this and use it. But once I set the mirrors, I just like to go into my terminal. So let's open up a terminal, and it's taking a long time. Wow, this is really slow. I'm not impressed. Look how long it's taking to open up a terminal. There's something wrong with this installation. Wow. Let's click it on again. There it goes. Let's shut it. Okay, let's click it on. Something not right. Doesn't open up. Let's try it again. You can see it's spinning. It's trying to open it. There it goes. Wow. So one of the things I do like about this GNOME edition of Manjaro is that the terminal is themed nicely, and it's themed with Zesh. Now, it's not the same Zesh configuration file that I use in my pure Arch Linux system, but it is Zesh and it's themed. So what I want to do is, let's do an Htop in here and see if it's easier to read. Yeah, we're at 1.3. It's still a bit hard to read, but anyways, this is the GNOME terminal. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's open it up again. See if it takes forever to open. Something not right with the system. So let's see if there's any up. Well, you know what? Let's change the font. Let's go into preferences. This is GNOME terminal, so it shouldn't be too hard to change the font. Let's do what do I want? Black on white. No, I want white on black. And let's leave the tango there. Let's show bright colors. Let's go into text. Let's click on this. We don't have any bold text in here, eh? Let's do monospace. Let's kick it up to 16. So let's see how that looks. Oh, that's better. Okay, now let's do an Htop. Let's see if that's more readable. Oh, that's a little bit more readable. So we're running at, you can see I have 4 processors, no swap. We're running at 1.3 gigabytes of RAM, which is pretty high. Let's quit out of there. And let's see if there's any updates to do. Sudo Pacman. They don't like those colors. Let's go back to preferences. Let's see if we can fix these colors. Let's do bold color. Let's change this to Xterm. Okay, let's do sudo Pacman. That's a little bit brighter. SYU. Oh, that's a bit better. And let's put my password in. Let's see if there's any updates to do. There's either going to be no update or there's nothing to do, because this, and the reason why there's nothing to do is that this ISO just came out yesterday. And of course, Manjaro doesn't do their updates the way pure Arch Linux does. So pure Arch Linux, there's updates at least every day, but probably 5 times a day or 10 times a day, there's updates to do in your Pure Arch Linux. In Manjaro, there's updates to do probably once every 2 weeks because, like I said earlier in the video, they take all the updates from Arch Linux, they pull them over to their repository, they test them for 2 weeks, and then they release them. So when you do an update in Manjaro, it's coming from the Manjaro repository. It's not coming directly from Arch Linux repository. Now, if there is an important security update, Manjaro will release it right away. They won't make it go through the 2-week testing process. So there's no updates to do. So the system's up to date. So right now I'm at an hour. This video has been recording for an hour. Hopefully I can chop it down so it's not so long. I wasn't intending this to be a long video. I've never, ever had this problem with Manjaro. I lived in it for probably at least 3 to 6 months. And I think I had another computer that used Manjaro for a year. And I've installed Manjaro in virtual machines many times. I've installed XFCE edition, the Gnome edition, the Plasma edition, and the Cinnamon edition many times in virtual machines and also in bare metal. And I've never had this problem with Manjaro. So there's something wrong. It was running really slow. It was using a lot of RAM, and the display manager sometimes comes up and sometimes doesn't. So I am greatly disappointed in Manjaro. I do not recommend using it. Do not use Manjaro. I would say if you want an Arch-based system, just go to Pure Arch. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know if you had a better experience with it. And if you did have a better experience with it, I'd like to know, what edition did you use? What version of Manjaro did you use? And was it in bare metal or a virtual machine? I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I am the Linux Mensch.